Now let's look at something very interesting. In our previous example, we had a very simple application and the first function run, and from within the first function, we actually ran another function called child. But in some cases, you do not want to run a child function at the time of the execution of the parent function, which is in our case, the first function. So what you can do is actually, instead of running this function, right? So I'm going to remove this. You can actually return the function definition. So I'm going to do return and do child. Now remember from our previous videos when we learned about return, return simply spits out something. You can return a value, whether it be a function, whether it be a string, a number, null, undefined, an object, array, whatever type we have learned about, you can return. You can even return nothing, and that would actually end the function because return has been called, but it will return nothing to whoever called it. So on line number 14, nothing is going to be returned. But in our case, we can actually return, in our example I want to show you, you can return a function as well. Now this function is not going to run. It's just the definition of the function is going to be given out over here. Now, when something is given out or returned by a function, we can capture that value. So I can say var f is equal to whatever value is returned. So when this particular function runs, child will not run. The value of child, which is this particular function, is going to be given out to f. So now if I save and refresh, you see line number 5 executed and 15. So line number 5 is over here and line number 15 is here. You see this particular function did not run because we never ran that function. Now, you see the value of child is captured in f, right? So we can now do f and put the invocation symbol, which is the brackets, and then this child is going to run from the outside in the global context. Now remember, if I wanted to run this particular function, I cannot do child like this. All right. If I try to do that, I'm just gonna remove all of this or comment this out. If I try to do this, refresh, it's gonna say child is not defined because in the global context, right? This is in the global context. There's no such thing as child. The child function is inside the first function. But when you spit out the child function and you capture it like this, it's now captured in f, and now you can actually run it f like this. So now I'm going to save, refresh, but before I refresh, I want to ask you a question. It will run, I'm telling you it's going to run, but my question is, what is going to be the value of a? Right? Will it be inside? Or if I just name this as a as well, so I'm going to call it a, I'm going to call, just make it simple, just don't have the variable b, I'm going to call both of them a. So the variable a has the value of global. The first function also has a variable a and the values inside. It's going to be printed and this is going to be printed. But when I run this, study this particular code and tell me what is going to be printed when I refresh. In what order? And what will be the value of a? Will it be inside or will it be global? It's defined over here, but it's run in a different scope. It's defined in the scope of the first function, but it's executed from the scope of the global environment, global scope. So will the value of a be from where it's defined or from where it's executed? That's the question. So think about it, and I'm going to save. Now I'm going to refresh. And let's take a look on line number 8. Line number 8, the value of a is actually the scope in which it was declared. So that brings us to one more definition, which is the lexical environment. A lexical environment is the physical location or the physical scope where a variable or function is actually declared. That is called the lexical environment or the lexical scope. So this particular function is lexically inside the first function. The first function is actually lexically in the global environment, right? So lexical means where a function or a variable is actually defined physically. So this is physically inside the first function. That brings me to one more rule, which is over here. The rule says variables are picked up from the lexical environment. So even though I ran the function 15 from the global scope, the value of A is always going to be picked up from whatever the value was. It's going to go in the scope chain and pick it up from the scope chain is going to be based on where the function was actually written or declared. It was written in this particular area, so it's going to look for it inside here. It doesn't find it, it goes one up. Oh, it finds it and it gets that value. So that's pretty much it for this video. I'm going to talk to you in the next, but recap this particular video, digest these ideas, because these kind of superpowers of JavaScript, which are not available in many other languages, make JavaScript so dynamic and powerful. So I'm going to talk to you in the next video.